But first, to his fans, he's the face of a new, honest, uncorrupt Pakistan. The cricket captain turned political leader. In the eyes of his opponents, he's an apologist for the Taliban at a time when Pakistan is plagued by violence and militancy. This week's headliner from Islamabad, Imran Khan. Imran Khan, thanks for joining me on Upfront. You have suggested that Nawaz Sharif, Pakistani Prime Minister, has lost moral authority, should stand down from office because he has no credibility after his alleged involvement in tax dodging, offshore accounts, the so-called Panama Papers in which he and his family's names appeared. Some would say you're trying to get him removed from office over unproven accusations because you couldn't actually beat him at the ballot box back in 2013.
Well, Mehdi, the issue of Panama Papers or Panama leaks is quite straightforward. That there were offshore companies belonging to Nawaz Sharif's children. They weren't declared by Nawaz Sharif. The companies belonged to his daughter, who was a dependent. And these companies bought property, millions of dollars worth in England. So he's implicated in it because he didn't declare the money. He's accused of concealment of assets. He's accused of tax evasion, corruption, and money laundering.
But do you want Nawaz Sharif to stand down? Is it your position is he should stand down from office?
No, we want him to answer. Basically, Article 40 of the Constitution of Pakistan says that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet are answerable to the Parliament in case of breaking the law or abusing taxpayers' money. They are answerable to the Parliament, which is what democracy is. So basically, we're just asking him to give us the answers.
In the wake of the recent failed military coup in Turkey, you said people would celebrate and distribute sweets if there was a military takeover in Pakistan, which prompted the government to accuse you of being shameful, indulging in a conspiracy. The Dawn newspaper accused you of threatening the democratic order, of betraying the constitution of Pakistan. What do you say to them?
Well, Mehdi, in 1999, there was a coup against Nawaz Sharif, who is now again the Prime Minister. And the sweet shops in Lahore ran out of sweets because everyone was distributing sweets. Now, I was basically comparing the two coups. There was one in Pakistan in 99, Nawaz Sharif as the Prime Minister, and people distributed sweets. There's one in Turkey where actually the people came out in support of the government. And I was comparing the two. The difference is that when Erdogan came into power, despite all his faults, if you look at the standard of living, you look at the per capita income, you look at the debt of Turkey, I mean, in every way, he's improved the lot of the common man.
But surely you'd accept that in a country like Pakistan, which has had as many military coups as Turkey, almost as many coups as Turkey, isn't it deeply irresponsible and dangerous in a country like Pakistan to even joke about military takeovers, for a politician to even hint at a military takeover?
Mehdi, to be clear, for 20 years, I have struggled for Pakistan's democracy. I started with nothing. I didn't come from a political family. I built a party which is now the biggest party in Pakistan. So I didn't struggle for 20 years to get the army to come in and take over. I mean, the whole struggle is to bring democracy to Pakistan. Basically, my comment was that we want a genuine democracy. We do not want a Hosni Mubarak type of democracy, because Hosni Mubarak also held elections, but there was no democracy. Democracy means where a leader is accountable to the people.
Okay. You've been accused of being not just too close to the military, but also you've been accused of being soft on the Taliban, of being linked to the Taliban. Some of your critics have even dubbed you Taliban Khan, because in the words of the Pakistani journalist Cyril Almeida, you've, quote, mainstreamed extremism. It's an allegation, even in the West, in the outside world, we hear more and more that Imran Khan is soft on the Taliban, that he distinguishes between good and bad Taliban. What's your response to such criticisms?
Firstly, what is the evidence that I'm close to the military? When General Musharraf was in power, when we had General Musharraf, a military dictator in power, I was the only leader, political leader who was sent to jail. I was his biggest opponent. I was against his military rule, probably, which is why I was the only one sent to jail. All the rest were house arrested. Now, second, Taliban. Most people do not understand the whole Taliban syndrome. The phenomena of Taliban has to be understood that there were no militant Taliban in Pakistan when 9/11 took place. There were no militant Taliban in Pakistan right up till 2004. The militancy started in Pakistan when Pakistan Army went into our tribal areas. The tribal areas of Pakistan are per capita are the most weaponized place on earth. It has more weapons than anywhere else. So when the Pakistan Army went into the tribal areas, collateral damage took place because there were villages that were being bombed, women and children were being killed, and our Taliban was not an ideological movement. The ideological part would be barely 5%. Basically, it was a reaction of Pakistan Army perceived to be going into the tribal areas on behest of the Americans, supposedly to flush Al-Qaeda, which had come in from Afghanistan after Tora Bora. And so we did not have ideological Taliban as a movement.
But a lot of people would say you're very good at analyzing the subject, you're very good at understanding the problem, but you don't condemn it as much as other people. We all agree that the Pakistani Taliban are a product of war, of militancy, of the war on terror, whatever you want to get into the root causes. But ultimately, they are a vicious group that kill civilians, and people like yourself, the critics say, don't condemn them enough.
This is absolute nonsense. It's just not true. All you have to do is look at my statements for the past 10 years. Every bomb attack any human being would condemn, where innocents are being killed.
Do you consider the Taliban to be a terrorist group?
Yes, they are. Anyone who kills innocent people are terrorists. They have killed, and there are 50 different groups. Remember one thing, Mehdi, there are 50 different Taliban groups, or at one point there are less now, but at one point, 50 different groups called themselves Taliban. Amongst them were drug mafia, land mafia, smugglers.
But the main group, the TTP in 2014, asked for you to be a mediator on their behalf in talks with the government. You turned them down, but the fact is that one of the world's most vicious groups picked you to be their go-between with the Pakistani government. Why do you think that is?
So there was an all-parties conference in Pakistan. All the parties decided that there should be a dialogue to make with the one who could be reconciled. So once this was agreed, the government started a dialogue or proceeded to talk to the Taliban for a dialogue. So once that happened, then the request came from Taliban, okay, the ones who they find credible, one of them was me, which of course I refused. And that dialogue was sabotaged by a drone attack. Before the dialogue could start, the head of that Taliban was killed by a drone attack, and that was the end of the talks.
On the ideological front, the former president of Pakistan, Asif Ali Zardari, recently criticized you for your party's decision at a regional level to allocate 300 million rupees, around $3 million US, to the Darul Uloom Haqqaniya, which has been dubbed the University of Jihad because of the number of Taliban fighters who have come through its ranks. Former President Zardari says that your party giving them money is the legitimization of the Taliban and an undermining of Pakistan's fight against the Taliban.
This is Zardari, like so many of the Muslim corrupt rulers, ex-rulers, trying to win Western support by saying, you know, how liberal they are and, you know, how anti-Taliban they are. And this has totally out of context, this whole thing is being said. Now, let me just explain what is my party's view on madrasas. When you marginalize people, as you're finding in the West, you radicalize them. Marginalization leads to radicalization. So the whole idea was to get the madrasa system into the mainstream so that these children from the poorest background in the madrasas, 2.2 million children, they should be brought into the mainstream so they could also get jobs.
But have you mainstreamed that University of Jihad now? Have you succeeded in mainstreaming it?
Firstly, it's, you know, all the governments, if it was a university for jihad, it should have been shut down. Because, I mean, there was Asif Zardari's government was in power for 5 years. Why didn't he shut it down?
It's not just the Taliban's intolerance that's threatening Pakistan today. You have Ahmadis being persecuted by the state, Shias regularly being targeted and massacred. Would you get rid of the blasphemy laws, for example, which were brought in during the Soviet war and which lead to a lot of minorities, Ahmadis, Christians, getting lynched, being put on trial, being sentenced to death? Would you get rid of those repressive laws?
First of all, the background of blasphemy law is this, that blasphemy law was brought in by the British, not at the time of General Zia, as it's wrongly perceived. The British brought it because when in villages where Hindu, Muslim, Sikhs, Christians were living, easily a riot could take place if someone said something against something bad about someone sacred to one of the religions. So the British brought this blasphemy law. It was actually to prevent there would be legal action against anyone who caused mischief. Unfortunately, Mehdi, in the 80s, we got these sectarian groups. First time we saw Shia, Sunni killing each other. We never had this before in Pakistan. Shia and Sunnis lived together before.
But would you, as Prime Minister, repeal those blasphemy laws that are used to target Christians, Ahmadis, and others?
Mehdi, it's not the laws. The laws are not a problem. Problem are militant groups in Pakistan. What should happen is we should get rid of the militant groups. If in a village, you're living in a village in Pakistan, unless you fight extremism, and extremism is not going to be fought by laws, extremism has to be fought first by disbanding those groups that are perpetuating this extremism. Whatever you do with the laws, people will be killed. And remember, since we've entered this war on terror, things have got worse.
We had Shahbaz Bhatti, Salman Taseer, leading Pakistani politicians were assassinated when they spoke out against the country's blasphemy laws. A lot of Pakistani politicians would like to speak out against those laws, but they're worried about being killed. They're afraid for their own lives. Are you one of them?
Ever since 9/11, our society has got very radicalized. And it is true that you have to tread a very thin line. If you, anything perceived to be, which one sect or any sect thinks that is sacrilegious, yes, your life is in danger. And I'm afraid we have to, we have to ride this difficult phase in the history of Pakistan. But the fact is, Mehdi, I'll just give you a statement. I don't want to go too deeply into all this, because it's a very difficult subject living in Pakistan. But I'll just tell you one thing. In my opinion, my party, my belief, all human beings have right. They should be protected by the state. They should be protected by the law. They should have equal rights, equal citizens. And what is happening, unfortunately, in the name of religion, is painful for all of us. Because this is not, in our opinion, most Pakistanis' opinion, this is not what Islam is.
Do you extend equal rights to Ahmadis?
All human beings have equal rights. Anyone who's a Pakistani has an equal right. The Constitution should protect him. He's an equal citizen.
Back in the day, you were captain of the Pakistani cricket team. The nation's hopes and dreams rested on your shoulders. Is it fair to say that in a sports-mad country like Pakistan, it's harder, there's more pressure being a Pakistani cricket captain than being a Pakistani political leader?
It was a very good training ground for what was to follow in Pakistani politics. Had I not had that experience of 10 years of captaincy, which is the longest tenure of anyone in our history, I wouldn't have lasted this long in politics.
Imran Khan, thanks for joining me on Upfront.